Good evening and welcome to this latest installment of interviews with professionals in the Eastern Dallas region who can be of service to families who are going through transitions. And tonight we have the pleasure of speaking with the one and only Mr. Ken Grover, who is the Executive Director of Windsor Rehabilitation and Healthcare in Terrell, Texas. Thanks for being with us, Ken.
It's great to be here, Mike. Thank you.
So Ken is willing to talk to us tonight about some of the things that an individual might want to consider when they come to a point in their lives when they're looking for a different community with different degrees of assistance, different degrees of healthcare. This is a situation I think a lot of us don't think about, at least in my stage of life, but it's really something that many of us will eventually have to face, whether for ourselves or for someone we love. And we hope that in this conversation that you can just be a fly on the wall and listen to this conversation and just determine what would be the best course for you and your family. So Ken, first of all, tell us a little bit. There are different kinds of facilities that a person might want to join if they are looking for some kind of assistance or some kind of ability to be with people with similar needs. Can you talk to what the different categories of these facilities are?
Yeah, you bet. So when it comes to, needing to place your loved one in a facility, there's two main options for where you're getting assistance. There's a third option where just kind of things are taken care of you, but you're not really getting assistance. So independent living is that last option of your housing is kind of cared for. Typically, you're going to have some type of a maintenance program that would be done, maybe house cleaning once a week. If it's an apartment style in a building, you're just going to be there amongst the others. There's usually activities that you can do and so forth. If it's an independent living that is kind of an individual apartment, like a little condominium or small villa type home, then the places are going to do like the yard maintenance and those kind of things. But otherwise, you're on your own. It's just taking away some of the tasks that are harder to do if you're living in your own home, right? So that would be independent living, and there's a huge range of costs on independent living. It all just depends on the size, depends on if you're an apartment setting versus like a villa setting, all those kind of things. But for those, you're going to be in a cost range of anywhere from, say, probably at the low end, $1,500 a month. That's going to basically kind of be you're just on your own. They're just providing a place for you to live and taking care of maintenance and so forth, right? Up to, maybe up to about 5,000 plus a month, depending on amenities, and higher if you're really getting into, nice higher end things. The second category would be assisted living. And assisted living is going to be for someone who they're just not able to be on their own anymore, but they don't need full 24-hour care, right? So someone who can function, and there's actually two different types of assisted living programs. There's type A and type B. So type A, and the designation between the two is type A, the person can exit the building on their own if there was a fire. There's certain a time limit that they have to do it in. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but someone who's independent enough that they could and with it enough that they could exit a building on their own if the fire alarm went off.
So it's really a safety issue. That's the
correct.
determining. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then type B is for someone who cannot. But again, typically in assisted living, people are more independent, and there's a wide range in assisted living as well, because there's different programs you can get through assisted living. You could have Well, so assisted living, they typically will offer a meal plan, but you don't have to buy into all of those. In an independent living, some of those will have meal plans as well, depending on the situation. But assisted living are all going to have a meal plan option. They're always going to be in a communal type of setting, so like your own apartment in apartment complex, and there's going to be activities and those kind of things. And again, there's a big range from a cost in assisted living as well. Probably the low end on assisted living would start at about $3,000 a month. And then you're going to go up from there depending on your needs. And that need can go from, just housekeeping once a week and meal service to actually having a worker come in and help with your medications, doing some care for you daily, on up. And then the third category is actual long-term care in a skilled nursing facility, and which is what I manage. And for a skilled nursing facility, it's someone who requires 24-hour nursing care. And that's kind of the big caveat there. So a person, in order for a skilled nursing facility, and there's a caveat here, if they want it to be paid for by one of the government programs, whether it be, insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, or so forth, you do have to meet medical necessity. From a standpoint of, anyone, if they truly wanted to, could live in a skilled nursing facility. Most facilities aren't going to accept just anybody, because obviously they want to manage their population and so
Right.
forth and those kind of things. But I've had cases where we had, like, say, a husband and wife, and husband, in my case, husband completely with it, would be totally fine in an independent living situation. The wife had, she had dementia, was more advanced stage. She needed 24-hour care. They both moved into my facility. In that case, obviously for her, we were giving total care. For him, it was, very little was required.
But he still wanted to be with his wife.
But he wanted to be with his wife, and they were able to do that. And we, we encourage, we definitely support those kind of things. Encourage gets a little bit tricky. I don't want to maybe go quite that far, just because there's a lot of factors that go involved into doing something like that. But in this case, it was appropriate, and it worked out. So he was able to be with his wife until she passed, and we were very grateful to be able to provide that service for him.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, when you have two residents like that, they're in the same dwelling, is
sharing the same room. Correct.
Is the cost the same in that case, or is it per
resident?
So
as far as in a skilled nursing facility, we have a per day rate. So a semi-private room, where, in other words, you're going to have a roommate, right? You're semi-private. In my facility, in most, our pricing is pretty, everywhere you go is going to be very similar. But like in my facility, it's $185 a day for the semi-private room. If you wanted a private room, fully to yourself, it's $235 a day. So for their case, since, both of them were there, they paid that semi-private rate, each to be in that room together.
That's actually a very interesting thing for me. There's some important people in my life where the husband and the wife, they each needed different kinds of care, and they ended up going into different facilities, and they actually spent the remainder of their lives separately. So that is remarkable.
Yeah, and it's unusual, I will say that. In all my time of being in long-term care, that was the only time we did it that way that I personally was involved with. I've heard about it with other facilities. Usually the reason why it wouldn't work that way, number one, just the cost is is large, of the different levels. Obviously, since a skilled nursing facility is providing 24-hour nursing care, our
Yeah,
cost is obviously high because we're having to pay for that, right?
right.
So cost is usually the biggest factor of why people wouldn't
Right.
do that. But there's other issues involved, of just making sure that the spouse who is not in need of that complete daily care is okay, by abiding by the rules of the facility. Because in a skilled nursing facility, we are so heavily regulated by the federal government and by the state government. There's a lot of things that we have to make sure happen, and most people are not going to want to abide by those
It'll be
rules.
a change in lifestyle.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Um,
yeah,
and so it does get a little bit tricky, but it's been done, and it worked. And like I said, I mean, in that case, for me, that's the best thing we can provide for someone at an end of life stage, is be able to,
right.
have their loved ones with them as much as possible. And we were able to do that in this case. So it worked out well.
Well, great. So just out of curiosity, um, I mean, the entrance criteria for going into a skilled nursing facility or any of these others, um, it may be a temporary situation, may be a long-term situation, and there's no real age criteria, right? I mean, it could be, someone in their 30s could be there. What is
Yeah.
the typical? Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, that can happen. Typically, a younger person isn't going to require the level of care needed for a short-term basis, right? So even if someone, say, had a hip replacement or a knee replacement and needed that additional help, nowadays, it used to be that you could see that even more, where a younger person could be in for a short stay just for, a rehab stint until they, got strong enough and so forth to be able to go home. But now the requirements for whether it be the insurance company or Medicare to pay for it's called a skilled stay if you're in for a rehab stint for a short term. The requirements are such that they have to have additional comorbidities in order for the insurance company or Medicare to pay for it. So like, we don't just get someone who is healthy otherwise and just had a hip surgery and needs that extra help. Those people go home now, and they go with home
I see.
health.
Okay.
Or if they might do a longer stay in the hospital, but a short stay on their rehab floor, and then go home. But most times now, unless someone has other comorbidities, they're typically sent home after a major surgery.
I see. Okay.
But we still get them. It's just typically they have a higher management of
There's
care.
more going on.
Correct.
There's
Correct.
several things that have to be managed.
Correct.
I see. So you've talked about government sources and insurance payments. Is it common that these sources of payment would cover all the costs for a skilled nursing facility or any of the other facilities?
Yeah. So when you're getting into the payment world of government subsidies and so forth, it gets very, very complicated. Okay. So Medicare for a short term, a post surgery, you need a short term stay for mom, for dad, whatever, in a rehab facility. Medicare pays 100% of your stay for the first 20 days. After day 20, from day 20 to day 100, they cover 80% of your stay. And so the other portion is then, if someone has a supplemental insurance, those can pick it up, or otherwise they have to pay that out of pocket. Okay. So most cases, if we try and get people, if they're a rehab to home is what we call it,
right.
we try and get them out, within those 20 days so that they're not having to have anything out of pocket. We can't always do that. Obviously, some people have a longer road of recovery and a lot
Right.
more work needs to be done, say if they had a major stroke or something like that. But that's what we try and do. If you have a supplemental insurance, so one of the HMOs that is a supplemental insurance for Medicare. So that's all the ones that you hear advertised all the time on the radio and TV and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those supplemental insurance programs are great if the person is living in the community. They're not as good if you're needing a skilled stay in a skilled nursing facility,
I see.
because that insurance company runs the show, right? So we are
Right.
constantly have to send them updates of what's going on, and they can say, okay, we feel that they have met what they're going to meet and they need to discharge.
Mm.
And so a person can challenge it and appeal, but the insurance company still runs the show of what they're going to do. And so it's a tricky situation for the consumer, because like I said, even if when I get to that point and I'm needing it, I would definitely consider a supplemental one if I'm living still at home and generally healthy. But it's always the person who's generally healthy that then slips on the ice or trips
Sure.
on a whatever and has a nasty fall and hurts themselves, and then they end up needing some serious rehab, and then they get into that an issue where the insurance company is totally managing their care. We've had cases where both the hospital and we felt the person needed to come to a facility like ours, and the insurance company said no, send them home with home health.
Wow.
So yeah, it happens, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's the downside of the managed care. The managed care model is they control it.
Yeah. Well, another thing that might be helpful if I were looking for a place for myself or for someone that I cared about, I want to know what to do to evaluate the different offerings that are out there. So suppose I need to go to a skilled nursing facility and there are several options out there. What are some things that I should be looking for? And is there anything that maybe the average person wouldn't have considered?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. In all honesty, checking out a place's Google reviews is not a bad way to go.
Really? Okay.
Just like anywhere, if someone for whatever reason isn't happy, the old adage is for one complaint they tell 10 of their friends, and for every time that something's done good, they maybe tell one person, right?
Right.
So just like that adage is true from the word of mouth, it's also true on oftentimes of people who write a Google review, right? So usually it's the person who's upset about whatever it may be, and they're going to put something in there. But reality is that it still is a good way to get some information.
They're going to
thing
the
I
source.
always- yeah, just like anything, you got to look at the negative ones and take them with a little bit of grain of salt. And even the positive ones, I'll say take everything with a little bit of grain of salt. I'll be fair.
Right.
But the best thing you can do is go visit them.
Yeah.
Go inside and you can feel the atmosphere in a facility. The way that you're treated, the way people respond to you, the cleanliness as you go through it is something that you want to pay attention to. Do people say hi to you as you're being shown around and so forth, right?
Especially since you're being courted as a potential client. I mean, we're going to be
correct.
paying a lot of money for this, so hopefully we're going to be treated well.
Yeah, correct. And obviously the person who's there, giving you the tour and everything, they're gonna be smiling, they're gonna be, going over all those kind of things. But you can, and until you've gone through a couple of them, you probably wouldn't realize it, but there's a feel that you can sense in different facilities. And the obvious things like I had brought up, cleanliness, friendliness, those kind of things, but you can feel just how the people are.
Yeah.
And that's something that I always tell people to pay attention to as they're having to look at facilities. There is a program out that's by the federal government. It's called the Star Rating Program. And there's some truth to it, but I always caution people on the Star Rating Program because the government looks 3 years back. And so a facility can have gone through a major turnaround from, new management, all those kind of things, and their star rating could still be bad from previous.
Or the reverse, right? I mean, the
Right,
reverse could
exactly.
be, yeah.
And that's exactly true as well. A facility could have great reviews and for whatever reason, is struggling right now. And so you're not going to get the care. And that's kind of why I bring up actually the Google reviews, because typically they're current,
dated. Yeah.
right? And they're dated. And so, you can look at recent Google reviews to get a better idea of what's happening in that facility currently, where the star rating, it could be a good, accurate indicator, and it could be completely off. And so,
yeah,
we always strive to get good star ratings, but we also know kind of how the whole thing works. And so, it's a little bit of a catch-22.
Something that's been fascinated me. So the residents of a community like yours will have a variety of dietary needs, right? There could be a very wide variety. And managing all of those dietary needs, the different kinds of foods, the different kinds of allergies, that must be quite an undertaking. How is that managed?
Yeah, it is. So every person comes in and they get a diet order from the physician. So, if they have diabetes, obviously we're going to do a low concentrated sweet diet. If someone say has gout, they can get on a gout diet, which, reduces like pork and, those kind of things,
right.
Salts, that kind of stuff. Same with the heart healthy diet, right? There's these different diets that we have. So we have, our dietary manager, and then our dietary staff. The dietary manager goes and, talks to people about more of their general things, likes, dislikes, those kind of things to create, their menu form. The menu is essentially the same as far as for the entire facility, right? These are our offerings that we'll have for that day. And for the most part, our diets are going to fall in line to where they're going to be heart healthy and low concentrated sweets just by themselves, right? That's just how we make
That's
them.
The default.
From that standpoint, yeah, for the default. What'll be different is then what happens like with desserts and so forth, right? Say if someone's diabetic, they're going to get the sugar-free Jello versus the regular Jello, those kind of things like that. But we also have a actual dietitian who we work with, and she comes into our facility multiple times a month, but she's looking at our records and our charts, off-site as well. But she comes in and looks at our residents as well. And we're looking at a whole bunch of different things with it from, we're looking at their weight. Are they gaining weight? Are they losing weight? We look at, again, certain specific comorbidities that's going to, be their diet will be depending on those comorbidities and so forth. So yeah, it's a lot, but it is. It's watched, and, we chart intake on every single, patient and are doing all those things. So yeah, meal it's a big undertaking.
Yeah,
it's challenging too, because you can never make everybody happy, when you're dealing
sure,
with, roughly 100 individuals, and they all
sure.
have different tastes and so forth. So you try and hit that middle ground with them.
Yeah,
And we always have alternates as well. We have alternates. So if someone doesn't like what the entree is for that day, they have different options of soups and sandwiches, or, hamburgers, those kind
yeah.
of things that, default for them.
So you have a choice. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This is maybe just a kind of general question, but can you anonymously share some stories where someone has come into this kind of setting and it has just revolutionized their situation, where they've come in with very difficult problems and it's really turned them around?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's hundreds of them that I could share. The couple I was referring to before, where the wife had severe dementia and
Yeah,
some medical issues, and the husband was still healthy. That was one of those situations where, um, she was, getting closer to end of life. She definitely required
mhm.
more care. And, bless his husband, he was devoted to his wife. It was actually a very, very beautiful love story, in all honesty. Um, but being able to work with them in order to uh, let them be together for the remaining days of her life.
Yeah,
Um, and it got hard for him, because as her dementia progressed, she was even sometimes forgetting who he was, even though he was with her. He was by her
sure,
side
sure.
pretty much 24/7. Um, and he was our patient as much as she was, right?
Right.
Of
If he wants an
helping
aspirin, he
him.
can't just get it himself, right? He has to,
Correct. Yes. Correct. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, we would, but when I say he was our patient as well, I'm referring more to the mental side, and the care side, and the
sure.
loving side, and so forth,
Yeah.
of helping him go through, that process, that transition. Um, and she did eventually pass. I was able to attend her funeral,
Mhm.
and go to that service as well. And he still comes in, to the facility, um, to thank the staff, to see the people that he grew close to
Yeah.
while he was there. And like I said, just being able to provide that for them in that manner was a great experience. We've had lots of stories of people that come in because they're needing some, extensive rehab, and needing that help. We offer all the modalities of rehab services. So physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. We have all of that in-house, on staff, to be able to provide for people. And the whole point is to get them up to their prior level of care, or level of function, so that they can go home and, be back in that, be back in their home, be with their loved
And
ones.
home, their next home might be an assisted living setting, right?
It could,
Or,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
obviously our goal is to get them back to where they were before.
right.
Obviously, that's not always possible. Um, but yeah, I mean, we've had a bunch of those cases. And then for our long-term care residents, this is their, for the majority of them, it's going to be their last home. And that's one of the things that I emphasize with my staff a lot is, we have to remember that, this is their home.
Yeah.
This is where they live. And we're gonna, make sure we treat them with dignity and respect, but we're also gonna love them. We're just gonna, um, for my staff, they've got, so my current census today is, I've got 65 residents in my facility, and that's 65 extra grandmas and grandpas for most of my staff.
Yeah.
Um,
Does your
and
staff is it common for members of your team to form an attachment to the people they're caring for?
oh yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
is. When you're caring for someone, every day, you grow attached to them.
Yeah.
Even when they're being difficult and ornery, you can still, you grow attached to them, and they are like your family away from home.
Yeah.
I have staff that often will, if it's someone's birthday, of course we celebrate them. We do the cakes and balloons and all that kind of stuff, but they'll bring them their own little presents, little things, little gifts, to help celebrate their birthdays. Little things like that, because you do grow attached to them. And it's hard when, even though it's life,
It's
right?
part of the
But when
job. Yeah.
someone gets to
Yeah.
that point and it's their time, we do as much as we can for the family. We'll oftentimes, if someone's getting close, we'll put them into a room. If they have a roommate, we'll put them into a room by themselves where family can come and stay with them, 24/7, to be by their bedside if they so choose. All those kind of things to help as that they transition, from this life. But it's amazing to be able to see the difference in their lives. For the families, it can be very stressful, with mom or dad is getting dementia and they're wandering out of the house, and
Yeah.
they're
Sure.
leaving the stove on, or those kind of things, right? And they're at a point they need to be in a facility where they can be watched, 24/7 and cared for, right? Because they're not remembering their medications and they're not taking them properly. So you can have negative effects of that. And so the relief for the family can be great once they come in, and it's a very difficult decision. I totally get it, why people hesitate to do that. But the relief for so many people that we worked with, for their families, is incredible, because they don't have to worry at any second. Think about it. If you've got mom living with you and she's got
Sure.
dementia,
Yeah.
she could wake up in the middle of the night, be confused,
Yes.
wander outside,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I've heard all the stories. And that's a lot of stress for the family that mom is living with, right? And so when they make that decision and they're able to come and know that mom's in a safe place, that she's getting taken care of, her medication's being managed, she's not now a concern to wander out into traffic and so forth, that
And what is it
creates
like?
a
What
huge
is it
sense
like
of
for the
relief.
family to come to visit them? Is that how
So
does that work? Yeah.
my facility, we don't have visiting hours. It's whenever. The only thing that we ask is that families be respectful of our residents when it's bedtime, right? And going to
Right.
sleep. And that includes their loved one, right? They need their sleep.
Sure.
They need to, being on a routine is hugely helpful. You say we start in diapers, we end in diapers, right? There's that saying
Sure.
of that.
Sure.
From a structure standpoint, it actually works the same way as well. A good solid routine, as mom or dad is getting, dementia and not what they used to be. Having that routine is very good for them. And so you want to try and keep that routine just like you had it with your kids. They go to bed at this time and so forth, and it makes your
Sure.
life so much easier. Same thing for mom or dad when they're up in, years and forgetful and so forth. So we ask the families to be respectful for that. But yeah, it's pretty much free reign, as far as, come whenever you want. Again, just be respectful of the others. And, they come in, they visit, spend time. We have, like private dining areas where if they want to do a family dinner, we can have that set up, that they come in and do like a family dinner away from all of the other, residents out of the main dining hall, or, whatever. If they want to join them, they can do that too. However they want to do it, we can pretty much accommodate it. So yeah, it's
That's
however they like.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually our family, we have loved ones in a foreign country. And my
Mhm.
wife recently was able to see this loved one for the first time in many years, uh, because of the pandemic. The pandemic
Mhm.
in this country made it so that visitations were were very restricted. They wouldn't allow outside visits. So, I mean, to me, the ability to be with loved ones is so important, especially at that stage of life.
It is. And, we went through that time as well.
Yeah.
When COVID first hit, they locked us up from the long-term care facilities. It was very difficult because we want our families to be there. We want them to be involved with their loved ones, right? And not having them there put a lot of stress on our residents. There was so much, with, first it was they could only go through the windows, right, and visit through the windows, or via, Facebook or whatever, right, or like this. Then it was, well, they can be in the same room, but you have to have a plastic partition
Right. Yeah.
up between them and so forth, and even now, like we still have to all be in masks even now.
Sure.
And especially right now, the transmission rate is high. And so that requires, that we even do more on our end. But, every person that comes in the facility has to have a face covering, from our standpoint, as long as they're not, visiting someone who, has, a disease or a process where, we need them in a true, surgical mask or an N95 mask or so forth. Any kind of face covering is sufficient, but all of our visitors still have to screen in, and still have to have a face covering, because, unfortunately the pandemic is still with us, and we still have to deal with the effects of it. But yeah, with the visitation restrictions were let up, quite a while ago for us.
Great.
And so that hasn't been a problem. We were very grateful when they were. Like I said, we want our families around. We want them seeing their loved ones.
Well, Mr. Grover, this has been very insightful. Thank you so much for sharing these insights about what it's like in the industry at large, and also specifically in your facility. I wanted to tell you also, a couple of years ago, my wife and I, so Terrell, Texas, it turns out, at one point was a world center for the training of the British Royal Air Force. Right. And I noticed that your facility is right near the museum that is dedicated to the memory of that. So it's really a fascinating story.
Yeah, that's just down the road. I haven't learned all of it. I actually just learned that part not very long ago. But yeah, we are on Flying British School Road.
In Terrell, Texas.
Yeah, in Terrell, Texas. Yeah.
Apparently the flying time from Terrell to Houston is the same as from London to Paris. So
really? Is that it? Okay.
Yep.
Well, that makes sense then.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us this evening. We hope to stay in touch, and this has been very, very invaluable for all of us. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's been a pleasure, and just happy to help any way we can. So thanks, Mike.
All right. Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.